Overall in 2026, we've listed out some of the key positives and negatives. There is obviously, what I touched on, still weak market fundamentals that could impact demand, such as the low commodity pricing environment. Overall, we are seeing it much more positive than where we were in 2024, in my opinion. So inventory situation is much more normal. The USDA is predicting that crop protection chemical spending will be up. We have seen high pest pressure in terms of insect pests. Fungicides, this is a sector that can be impacted more than others by low grower incomes, so that's one to keep an eye on. We have seen a lot of price realignment, now mostly complete, and actually some price growth drivers through the tariff situation. And again, glyphosate has definitely been more positive in the last few months. So it is possible that crop prices, at the bottom of the trough, as we would say. So, not expecting overly positive, but not exceedingly negative either. And as I touched on, new product introductions as well, driving growth. Potential adoption of E15 in the US, so in more states and also during more parts of the year, we'd expect corn demand in the US to increase through that. We've also seen Brazil put much more of a focus on maize ethanol production as well. That's expected to double in the next few years. So the maize sector in Brazil are also benefiting from increased biofuel demand. There is some negatives that we're looking at in 2026, though. So we did have some good weather in key markets in 2025. If we do have less favourable conditions as we move through the year, this could obviously impact pest pressure and demand. Weather is obviously a key variable and a fundamental influencer on the market. Obviously, you can't predict it for the whole entire year, but if we take a more average year compared to 2025, then there could be the potential that demand would be impacted there. Weak agricultural economy still in the US and Brazil, higher input prices of fertilizer and of fuel, for example, and this isn't being matched by any commodity price improvement as we've seen. So this does provide less purchasing power, potentially lower spend on crop protection. And there is still issues around high costs of borrowing, which prevents access to credit and makes it much harder for growers to purchase products as well. And again, commodity pricing pressure significantly reduced incomes in the US in particular. So I think in 2025, the US did benefit from about $40 billion in governmental support. I think next year it will be about 13 billion. So there is, a significantly lower amount of aid being put to farmers in terms of financial aid, but offsetting that is a normalization of the tariff situation. So that could, have an offsetting effect to that. Something else that will impact the market as we move through the year is loss of key products through regulation. So effectively in the EU, we have now lost, or we will lose in 2026, flufenicet, which is a huge cereal herbicide in particular, and also tebuconazole, which is a significant fungicide in the market. So value being taken out of the market by regulation is another issue as we move through the year. If you want to just quickly take a look at the sort of longer term trend, where we think the market is moving in the next 5 to 10 years, what are some of the positives and negatives? As I said, 2024 looks like the trough year, the definitely lowest point of a cycle, and we are starting to come out of that. And if you start to look forward in a few more years, what are the big drivers here? So pest resistance, as I touched on, is something that is definitely helping value development. Developing markets in regions like South Asia, Central America, Middle East and Africa, driving growth at the volume and value level. Further uptake of seed treatments and biologicals. The biologicals market, in terms of biopesticides, is one that is obviously continuing to increase. However, what I would say is in definitely 2025, 2024, we did have the issue that, grower incomes were squeezed as such that a lot of biopesticides that were deemed, interesting to use but not necessary were definitely reduced or lowered in usage. So we did have, a decline, or let's say a cessation of the growth in the biologicals market. So where before we were experiencing very rapid rates of market growth, in the last couple of years, I would say that's actually stalled quite a bit as economics of production and grower sentiment has shifted slightly as they've looked to, ensure yields and reduce spending. So we have seen the biologicals market being actually put under a bit of pressure there, offset slightly by continued growth in row crop use in Brazil, for example. And also in places like Southern Europe as well, still strong in terms of biologicals. However, the weather in Southern and Eastern Europe in this particular period wasn't really conducive to high levels of product usage. So the market there is impacted more by weather, but definitely economics of production, stalling growth in biologicals, I would say, in the last 12 to 18 months. But expected over the next 5 to 10 years, continued strong growth in that sector. And digital agriculture is increasing rapidly in a lot of markets and is becoming much more significant. We're looking at increased adoption of drone technology, improved online agronomic advice, which can sometimes provide a boost in terms of market value if the agronomist is, pushing a particular set of products that the grower would like to use. Higher use of e-retail as well, improving access to products for a lot of growers where before it was an issue. Pest scouting and field mapping, so we can be much more targeted in what products we're using. But negatives, we are seeing some new GM areas coming through, particularly in China, as Roundup Ready soybean and maize will be introduced. Also, new herbicide tolerant trait stacks. So we're now looking at PPO, HPPD tolerance, as well as the glufosinate, glyphosate, 2,4-D dicamba. The impacts of variable rates and precision spraying technologies on volumes. So while these products and the formulation requirements could definitely boost value, when you're talking about variable rate or precision applications, there is obviously a negative on volume applications taking place there. Commodity and input price normalization. So we'd expect this to flatten out what we've seen compared to the last couple of years and be much more normal over the next 5 to 10. However, climate change, increasing weather volatility. I would also suggest there's perhaps a positive driver from climate change as well, in that we are seeing spread of pests from different regions where before they weren't really viable due to climatic conditions. We are seeing a differing spread and an increased spread of certain pests in certain regions. So that is changing spray requirements in a lot of different places. We have seen a slowdown in new active ingredient R&D coming through from the pipelines. We have had a lot of recent introductions in the last couple of years, but beyond that, we expect that to slow down as cost has increased exponentially. And again, geopolitical trade tensions obviously continuing to be an issue moving forward. We have seen a normalization in the tariff situation, but moving forward, there still could be a lot of uncertainty here. So thanks for listening. I hope you found that interesting.